Now remember that interaction theories came later than functional and conflict perspective. So the relationship here with feminist theory is different than it was for example, Durkheim and Parsons with the division of labor, and Marx and Engels with the gendered divisions in society. So as a foundation, interaction theories are our micro perspective. Remember, they look at those intimate level relationships, small groups, two people interacting with each other. They look at how you, in these small groups, share meanings based on symbols, and how that determines the structure of society. And so interaction theories at their core attempt to determine the basis of meanings that we have, shared meanings based on symbols, and if we combine that with a micro-perspective view of feminist theory, we want to know how gender influences our behavior. How do our interpretations of gender influence society? The basic foundation of interaction theories is that the structure only has meaning because we have assigned meaning to it. And while early interaction theories miss gendered interpretations, contemporary feminist theory used at the interaction or micro level helps us to understand how gender is displayed, portrayed, and reinforced in society. And I'll give you a good example. A lot of my students don't seem to be too concerned with using the term "you guys" to express everyone in a room, male or female. But this is problematic for me, and I found myself when I first started teaching using "you guys" a lot in my classrooms. And so one semester I was bound and determined that I was going to break myself of this habit, because to me this is using a gendered term to describe people that aren't all that gender. And so I said to my students, I'm going to buy pizza every time I use the phrase "you guys" and someone in the classroom calls me on it. I'm buying pizza for the entire class. Well, let me tell you, after about $600 worth of pizza in a semester, I broke myself of the habit of using "you guys" to express a room of mixed gender. Interaction feminist theories also allow us to examine what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man. What are the meanings of these words, and what are the symbols that we attach to those meanings? It also allows us to drill down on Parsons' ideas about the instrumental and expressive roles, and to try to understand the meaning of gender and the meaning of gendered roles at a more intimate level. So let's put that in practical terms. What does it mean to be male? What does it mean to be a little boy? What does it mean to be a teenager, a young man, and a man? And what does it mean to be female? What does it mean to be a little girl, a young woman, a woman in society? And so if we look at the behaviors, the experiences of these two groups of people, we find that they are very, very different. And we'll talk just about little boys and little girls here. When we go to the playground and we watch these two groups, what we find is that the play of little boys is often more rough, it's often more interactive, and that there is less communication going on except for in the context of the game. And so while there might be some discussion on the court about what's going on in the game, the discussion itself is not intimate and it's not meaningful unless we put it into the context of the sport. When we look at the play of little girls, what we find is that oftentimes their play has a basis in reality. In other words, they tend to mimic and replicate the behaviors going on around them. And so you'll see little girls playing house. You'll see them playing with their dolls and replicating what goes on inside the home. In addition, the conversation that takes place here is not about the game of playing house. Rather, as Goffman told us, the conversation becomes a script. It becomes a way of replicating or mimicking reality. And so a conversation develops these types of interactions that young girls have aren't necessarily dependent on play. Rather, they translate to social reality in many respects. And so you can see how the play of little boys and little girls is quite different. But the question for sociologists is, why is this the case? Is there some inherited aspect of this type of behavior, or do we socialize our children to believe that these behaviors are acceptable based on gender? And this is the feminist interactionist perspective in a nutshell. Feminist theorists want to know about female and male social interaction. They want to attempt to understand the meanings of words and stereotypes and symbols, and they want to figure out what the implications of this type of thinking and behavior are on the bigger picture, on the structure of society. Without feminist theory, and without this interaction application of feminist theory, we haven't had an opportunity to examine the implications of why it is that boys play basketball and girls play house. That's a very simplistic interpretation, but if we look at the bigger picture, it helps us to understand how we replicate those roles in social settings as adults. It's not as big a deal today as it was maybe 20, 30, 40 and more years ago. However, we still accept that little boys, generally speaking, are going to grow up to be doctors, lawyers, firefighters, police officers, and little girls are going to grow up to be nurses and teachers and mommies. And so we need to understand that at a very early age, these interactions that we define for our children have implications on the bigger picture. All right, I hope this helps. Take care.